Hello, this is part 2 of setting highlights and shadows and color and tone using curves. So in the last tutorial or part number 1, we set all of the color and we set the highlights and shadows first, and then we did color and tone and we compared them. So overall the color and tone seem to be a little bit better. It's not a huge difference on this image. But you can tell the difference if you take a look at it, that just the highlights and shadows is a lot bluer overall, and the color and tone is a little bit more yellow, but we have a lot more color in it also, so the intensity is good. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and make some other corrections to this. So the other areas that I usually use to make color corrections are the hue and saturation, which is over here in the adjustments palette, layers palette, or the color balance. So I'm going to start with the hue and saturation adjustment layers first and go from there. So when you click on the hue and saturation adjustment, you'll get the dialog box, of course, but in the master setting you can you have a whole range of different areas that you can adjust. So in this one I want to adjust the yellows, and what I want to do is I want to back off on the yellows. So I'm going to move my layer palette over here to get it out of the way, and I'm going to lower the saturation. So this is a really great technique that works really well in a lot of instances because of the fact that if you have too much color in one area, you can make adjustments to it really easily and quickly. So lowering the saturation works really well. So it just seemed to be a little bit too yellow. You can see before, it's not a huge difference, but it makes quite a bit of difference to the image. So the other thing that I want to take a look at too is up in the master setting. So in the master setting, if you want to set the hue and saturation, you don't want to lower the saturation setting because you'll turn it into a black and white image. So brightness or lightness, that could possibly help a little bit. So I mean, you could lighten it or you could darken it slightly, and that may help a little bit as far as the blue sky is concerned, so I'm going to leave it there. But the other area is if you go into hue and saturation, if you move to the right, you'll pick up green. You move to the left, I mean, it looks opposite of the way it should be. You're going to pick up some blue. So you may want to increase the blue slightly because we're losing a little bit in the cloud or in the sky. So I'm going to increase that just slightly. And then I'm also going to go into the blues here. Now maybe when we made our color correction, we lowered the blues too much when we leveled everything out. But we just have to see by trying this and seeing what will happen. So in the saturation, I'm going to bring the blue saturation up slightly. Now if I bring it up too much, you're going to get this crackly effect up in the sky. So you got to be careful about how much you adjust these things, your images. So I want a little bit more blue, okay, and that's not bad. But let's go back to, we have yellows. Let's see if we can lower the brightness of the yellows maybe and see if that will make any difference. It doesn't seem to make much difference at all. So let's see if we could change the tone in here. Yeah, we're getting a little bit better tone in the man's face. Now keep in mind that we can always do a selection, a mask, or any of the color adjustments that we're making, and that was in the other previous tutorials where it says masking for adjustments that you'll see. So if you want to go in there, you can see that. We haven't really got into selections yet, and we will get into that later, but for right now this is what we need. So I'm going to go ahead, and I've done as much as I can on the hue and saturation, so now I'm going to go into the color balance. So in the color balance we have the same thing. We have well, not the same thing, but it's a little different. We have midtones, shadows, and highlights. but we have the adjustments in color in here. So what I want to do is I want in the midtones, I'm going to go ahead and increase the blue slightly instead of making it yellow, which doesn't work very good. And then I'm going to go into the shadows, and I'll increase the blue a little bit in the shadows slightly, and let's see in the highlights, and try to increase the blue slightly. So I had to add a little bit more blue into this, but you can see now that if I turn these off and I turn that on, that's not bad. That was the highlights and shadow setting, and this is the color balance setting. So you can see, whoops, turn this off. You can see it's getting pretty good. We still might need to adjust in here the highlights in here also. So the highlights and shadows, we might need to make it a little bit brighter. So one of the things I like to do if you're trying to isolate these, instead of having to turn them all off and then turn this on, what I like to do is I can select multiple layers by holding the shift key down and clicking on the layers like one by one, or I can go down from the top. Since the top one is selected already, I can go to the one that I want to add together, and I can select all three of these at the same time. If I hold the command key down and click on groups, it'll create a group for it, and it'll put all of those items or adjustments into one group. So you can see it's all here. And then if you want to name the group color and tone, we can do that, and then you know what it is. You can also right click it and give it a color designation. That's just one of the things that you can do if you want to. Now I'm going to turn this off, and then I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to go to the curves, and I want to increase the midtones just slightly. Now his face still looks red, so we could do a specific selection and make his face a little bit lighter. So in order to make that adjustment to his face, because we're adjusting overall colors everywhere, it's going to, his face just looks like he got sunburn or something. So what I'd like to do is just adjust his specific face. So what I want to do is I'm going to go up into the toolbox underneath the magic wand. There's 4 tools over here. I'll just scoot over and you can see where it's at. Is if you hold your mouse key down, you'll see the magic wand. Probably that's the default setting, but if you hold the mouse key down, you can get to the quick selection tool. And the quick selection tool is really great because it selects within a certain area really nicely. And what I can do is I can go ahead and go in here and just click and drag around his face and get a really nice quick selection. Now I have not feathered this. We'll get into refine edge, which is up at the very top up here. Refine edge, we'll be using this to make our selections a little bit better, and I'll just show you real quick what that looks like. In refine edge, you'll be able to see your specific selection a little bit closer, and you can see it on different backgrounds and so on. So we'll go back to this later, but on here I just want to select this and make this an adjustment, a specific adjustment. And since I'm actually in the color and tone, when I create this adjustment, it should go directly into this group. So instead of using one of the other adjustments, I'm going to just instead of using curves, I'm going to use levels, because I just want a real simple lightness adjustment. So what I want to do is just lighten this up slightly, and you can see on his face now, if I zoom in, you can see it looks a lot better. And what it does is it creates a specific area that it will adjust only. So you can see in here that makes a huge difference, and maybe it's a little bit too light. I'll darken it up just a little bit by pulling it to the right, but you can see that that's a huge difference in there, and that's exactly what I want to do. So I think that's it for this image. I don't want to do any more to it, but I think we've gone over everything that we needed to. We went over creating color and tone curves adjustment. We went over using the curves adjustment to do highlights and shadows. You can compare. When we did the color and tone adjustment, it not only adjusted the color, but it also affected the shadows and highlights and the tone at the same time. So we got a kind of a group overall adjustment when we did that. So and then we went into, we used hue and saturation and color balance to compensate for the colors. You can see it was really yellow, and then we used hue and saturation first and then color balance to compensate for that. So I think I've got it exactly the way I want it now. And then we did a selection of the man's face and used levels to make a real quick mid-tone adjustment only. Highlights and shadows don't work very well, but mid-tones, because his face is more in the mid-tone area, works very well. So you can close this up. We created, showed you how to select layers, group them down here. Oops. Select layers, group them down here. So you can see all the things that I did, the curves, colors and tone, the hue and saturation, and the color balance, and this was the levels I did just on his face. So you can see the white area is the face area and the black area is all masked out. So that's in this group right here, and then we have the other adjustment located below it. So you can see the difference between that and this, and it's a much better image. I think anyone would be happy with this image. It looks great. The colors look good. The detail looks good. The highlights look good. Everything looks good on this. So I think we're pretty much complete with this. So that's the end of this tutorial using curves. So I will be posting more tutorials later for you.